Hello! So, I am finally taking a look at the Boeing 787 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I will admit I did fly it when the simulator was first released, but it wasn't in such a good state back then, so I put it to one side and concentrated on the other aircraft in the simulator. But as of the aircraft and avionics update that came out in recent days, the 787 has had a complete overhaul. So we're going to work through starting the aircraft up. I've written up some notes, so this is a functional checklist. It cuts out everything we don't absolutely need to do in the aircraft, so it should shorten the time scale up for getting it up and ready for flying quite dramatically. Okay, so let's go and jump inside the aeroplane. And I'll work through the checklist. I'll put a link to the checklist in the notes as I commonly do with these sort of things. So this is as much about me validating the checklist as it is about showing you how this works. So I've no doubt I will make mistakes along the way. Hopefully we'll recover quickly if I do. So let's go and get on with it. So Control 7 takes us to the overhead view in the cabin. First thing we're going to do is open the battery. Also, not open the battery, switch the battery on. Here we go with the mistakes. So switch the battery on. Then we go and turn on the external power if it's available. So external power is available. So we turn the 3 external power switches on. In the IRS section at the top, we can turn the left and right IRS sections, inertial navigation systems on, I should say. And then in the electrical section, which is just down here, we're going to turn the APU to start, and then it will fall back to on all on its own. And you'll notice a lot of the buttons that you'd expect to be off typically are already on in this aircraft. So it's kind of a common theme, and it's been a bit of a learning curve around that. So emergency lights right up at the top. So if we scroll this way, we can see there's the... Where is it? Emergency light switch is a tiny little switch. So we roll the mouse wheel on it and it sets it to armed, and then we can close the cover on it. Okay, so now we're going to go and program our route into the flight management computer. So we press Control 3 to look down at the flight management computer. So it's actually a touch screen rather than a physical device, but it has got a keypad alongside it. So you can actually repurpose this to do lots of things. So you can show systems on it, or the MCDU essentially, or CDU in this case. So what do we do in here? So we get all the normal data on the front screen, which is perfect, and then we can say position initialization, and we can put in our reference airport. So we are flying today from San Jose International, and we're going to program a basic route in around the area. So Kilo Sierra Juliet Charlie is the ICAO code. So Kilo Sierra Juliet Charlie. So key that into the scratch pad and drop it into the reference airport. Then we can go to the route page and we can key it in again. So Kilo Sierra Juliet Charlie as the origin, and again for the destination. So Kilo Sierra Juliet Charlie, drop it in the destination. We are taking off on runway 30 right. So we'll key in 30 right and drop that into the runway field, and we'll make up a flight number of our own choosing, ABC 123, and then we can carry on to activate that plan, and we can execute at this point as well, and we can go to performance initialization now. So let's put in our cruise altitude. We're only going to go to 5,000 feet today. Cost index, we're going to go 100. Obviously in the real world you'd be looking up your cost index from your operational flight plan. So if you use Simbrief, you'll know all about that. Zero fuel weight, we can pre-calculate it. So if we click it once, it goes in the scratch pad. Click it again, and it goes into zero fuel weight. We'll set reserves at 1. So that's 1 ton of reserve fuel basically. And then we go to execute that. So we can go to thrust limit next. So this is our climb profile. We leave it on default. We could derate it if we wanted to. Carry on to takeoff. We'll put in 5 degrees of flap for takeoff. Centre of gravity can be calculated for us, so you just click it twice and it does that all for us. Notice it's now saying FMC pre-flight is complete. Well, I don't think it is, because we haven't put the V-speeds in. It's calculated them, but we haven't copied them across, so we just click the boxes to make that happen. So we can go to the departure arrival page next. So if we go to departures and arrivals, it knows we're leaving on 30 right. We're not going to use a SID. So that's fine as it is. So we'll go back to index for departures and arrivals. We'll go back to arrival and say we're going to come into San Jose on ILS for 30 left. So we're taking off on 30 right, but landing on 30 left because it has ILS. So we'll say ILS 30 left. We're not going to use any transitions, not going to use any stars. So we'll just execute that. And if we go and look in the legs page now, you can see there are the waypoints for the approach. But obviously we've got no first half of the flight. So let's go and refer to LittleNavMap and see what we've got penciled in here. So the first waypoint when we take off is Musk, M-U-S-S-K. So M-U-S-S-K. Drop that into the gap in the flight plan. And we can execute that. Then we'll go to Ginju, G-I-N-J-U. G-I-N-J-U, and we'll drop that on top of GenS, which will push it down. Yeah, so it's put a discontinuity in, but there's GenS still down there. We'll put in several changes now and just leave it, and it will be on modified route as we do that. So Ginju, next one is Vinco. So key in V-I-N-C-O. Drop that in. Did I miss the key? I missed the key with the mouse. And Swigs, S-W-I-G-S. Drop that in. And finally, Clyde, K-L-I-D-E. K-L-I-D-E. So we'll drop that in. And then if we go next page, we'll see where it's pushed the discontinuity on. So then we select GenS, pull it back up over the top of the discontinuity, and everything slides up, and we're good to go. Okay, so the flight plan is basically done now. If you press legs again, it goes to the most, the first leg in the list. Okay, so that's the flight plan done. So back overhead then, we're going to start working through the rest of the preparation procedure. So, the FD, so the flight deck door power has to go to on. It's at the top of the second column. So here's the second column. FD door power goes to on. Window heat section, second column, third row. We're going to go and turn on the primary window heats. Listen to me. The passenger sign section, second column at the bottom. So we want to turn this knob to auto. On the anti-ice section, on the third column at the bottom, we're going to turn these three knobs to auto. So this is the wing anti-ice and the left and right engine anti-ices all go to auto. External light section, nav light goes to on now. Air conditioning section, fourth column in the middle, so it's over here. We're going to go and turn the left and right packs to on, or auto, sorry. And then, I always get this wrong, the recirc upper has to come on. There it is. If you don't do this, you get a warning appears on the screen, the ECW screen. I'll show you that later. Okay, so now we go back down to the master control panel for the autopilot. So control and 2 brings us here. We're going to go to 5,000 feet, so we'll go and pre-select that on the altitude and then press the knob to confirm it. We can turn the flight directors on now. We could select vertical speed mode to take off, or to get off the runway I should say, so 2,500 feet a minute perhaps. But we can also pre-select VNAV and LNAV. So it will follow the route and use vertical speed as well. So you can see that reflected up here. So it's actually going to go, yeah, VS and VNAV. Okay. So calibrate the altimeter. Oh, yeah, calibrate the altimeters. It's very late here and I'm quite tired, which is why I keep making speaking mistakes. So press B and it calibrates the altimeters for us. Auto throttle goes to armed. So then control 2 we were already on control 2, weren't we, for this view, but we're actually more interested in what's down here. We want to set the auto brake to RTO. So and on ECT screen in the middle now, you can see the stabilator trim, so we can use the elevator trim to move the elevator within this green box, which means when the aircraft accelerates on the runway, it will be in a position of equilibrium when it gets to the rotate speed, so it won't suddenly start moving around on us. So back overhead, control 7, we go to the hydraulics section, C1 and C2 to auto. So here's the hydraulics, C1 and C2 go to auto. The left electric and right electric goes to auto, so that's this one here, this one here. In the fuel section, third column in the middle, I'm going to turn on all of the fuel pumps. Then external lights, we're going to go turn on the beacon light, which really points towards we're about to start the engine, so that warns the ground crew outside with the beacon light coming on. So then we press Control 5 to go to the central pedestal. We go and turn on the transponder, turn it to the XPDR setting, and then we're going to start the engines. So Control 7, we can turn the engine starters are up here, way up above us, so we go and turn the right engine to start. If we look down in the cockpit at the engine management screen here, you can see the N2 number, the gas turbine number, is coming up. This is a percentage of its speed, so when it gets to 20%, we can advance the fuel control lever for the right engine. So 18, 19 and 20, advance the right lever, and you can see auto start is happening, the exhaust gas temperature should start raising, and the turbofan will accelerate as well. So when that process is complete, if we press Control 7 to look overhead again, you'll see this knob will go back to norm all on its own. Just have a sip of coffee while we're waiting for it. Okay, there you go. So then we move the left engine starter to start, and again same process, we watch the N2 number. When it gets to 20, we can advance the fuel control lever for the left engine. So it's gone 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, advance the lever, continues on past, it says auto start. The exhaust gas temperature will start raising, there it goes, N1 number is increasing, that's the turbofan, and then you'll notice let's do it from this view, notice the start mode will go back to norm. Okay, so now in the electrical section, first column at the top, we're going to turn the APU back to off, so that's here. We don't need the auxiliary power unit anymore. External lights, third column at the bottom, we turn the taxi light to on, and we can go taxi. So this is a bit, I've done things a little bit out of order here, because in the real world you wouldn't have started the engines until you had done pushback. So I'm going to do things a little bit differently today. So I'll just press Shift P to make pushback happen. And as soon as the truck is engaged with the aircraft, I will release the parking brake, which will allow us to roll backwards. So if we remember looking at the airfield here, we want to turn right to go down to runway 30 right, 30 right. So if we have a look, the tractor is nearly engaged. So there it goes, and off the parking brake, which means the aircraft can roll. Obviously, yeah, in the real world you do pushback first and you start engines during the pushback. So while we're doing this, we can also get the flaps to 5 degrees. wait for the pushback to go a bit further, give us some room to turn. So we need to turn right. At least we've got no aircraft in the way just over here, which is good. So press Shift P again, put the parking brake back on, wait for the truck to get out of the way. If we sit up in the cockpit, we can actually see him pulling away, look. Okay, so off the parking brake. The aircraft has positive thrust immediately, so we're just easing the throttles forwards a tiny amount, just to give us some forward momentum to make this turn. Sit back down again. And we're going to taxi down to the runway. So if we have a look at our taxi route, we want to go right to the end basically for runway 30. Slowly coming off the rudder, or sorry, off the nose wheel steering. Oh, the sim's paused. It will unlock itself in a moment. There's been numerous issues with the sim freezing recently. It usually recovers. There we go. So I'm going to pull out to the taxiway. Do a bit of a zigzag here to get away from the other parked aircraft. Obviously in the real world you get ground instruction of exactly which route to take on the taxiways. We're just making up our route as we go along here today. So on the way to the runway you will be looking at the engineering notifications here. So obviously we've got no warnings, it's just telling us that the auto brake is configured, the doors are on auto. So while we taxi we can start configuring lights, so we can go and turn the strobes on. Normally you wouldn't put the landing lights on until you're on the runway, we're just going to do it ahead of time. There's nobody in the way, nobody to blind. I've not actually flown from this airport before, I don't think. Oh look, we got our friendly aircraft doing loop-the-loops in the parking area over there. It must be a common theme at the moment, or certainly today. I've seen him around quite a bit. Is that a beaver today doing that, or is it a bird dog? It looks like a bird dog actually. Pretend we didn't see that. I do wish you're sober, we'd get to the bottom of what causes that. So we're not going to need the whole runway here, so I'll pull out at the next intersection, out onto the runway, and we'll get going. So, as I said earlier, I think there's a lot of kind of connective logic you can see around the Boeing aircraft. So even though the 787 is obviously massively more modern than the 737, you can see the similarities. And even if you go back to things like the Airbus A310, you can see the similarities in the design of that, where they took tried and tested designs that came from the likes of McDonnell Douglas and Boeing, and they built upon them. But all of the airliners, you know, share quite a lot of ideas in the way they do things. Right, so just lining up on the runway. Okay, full throttle. waiting for rotate on the indicated airspeed ribbon. Auto throttle should have come on by now. Oh, it doesn't come on until you pull off the runway, does it? I forgot that. There we go, so we can rotate.
Salinas Airport information
Gear up.
2200 Zulu. Wind 269er at 12. Visibility 10. Sky condition.
So auto throttle has come on automatically, and we can engage autopilot.
Temperature 19er. Dew point 10.
Be interesting to watch what it does look, because it's got this bizarre.
ILS runway tree 1 in use.
What was going on with
Landing and
that?
departing runway tree 1.
It's obviously because I didn't set
Say direction of flight.
an initial weight. Oh no, I did. I set the runway we were taking off on.
Advise controller on initial contact.
Very
You have
odd.
golf. Salinas Airport information hotel.
So whether that's a
2200
mistake is another matter. And yeah,
Wind
this is
269er at 12.
having a bad day, isn't it?
10.
Let's have a look. If we
Sky condition.
increase the
Few
range on
clouds at
this,
1,900 feet. Few clouds at 4,900 feet. Temperature 19.
so it's got this part of the route right. Obviously that's the hold if you do a missed approach. So it's going to put us straight to a hold if we do a missed approach,
ILS runway tree
which we
1 in
will.
use.
We'll get it right.
Landing and departing runway tree 1. VFR aircraft. Say
Okay, so
direction
we're
of
locked
flight.
at 250 knots,
All
coming out
aircraft
towards that
red
first
back hold short
waypoint.
instructions. Advise controller on initial contact. You have hotel.
It's interesting, isn't it? That it did
Airport
that
information hotel.
initial
2200
push to the side.
Wind 269er
Now there's
at
probably
12.
something that I've missed.
Visibility 10. Sky condition. Few clouds.
So we're at 5,000 feet
1,900
now.
feet. Few clouds.
Engines
at
have pulled back.
4,900 feet.
Just holding 250
Temperature
knots.
19er.
We're about to make the right turn at Musk
10.
towards Ginju.
Altimeter tree
Which is working perfectly.
0.08. ILS runway
So should we
tree
go
1 in
and
use.
detune the comm radio before it drives us completely round the bend?
VFR aircraft. Say
So if we
direction
go
of flight.
to VHF
All aircraft red back
and
hold
we
short
tune in a
instructions.
completely different
Advise
frequency,
controller on initial contact. You have hotel.
it's not going
Salinas
to...
Airport information
Okay,
hotel.
1,
2200
2, 3, 0,
Wind
0.
269er at
Put that in the
12.
standby frequency. Oh, it's not going to allow that either.
Sky condition. Few clouds at 1,900 feet. Few clouds.
I wonder if we're
at
not allowed to do it
4,900
here.
feet. Temperature 19er. Dew point 10.
Let's do it over here then
Altimeter
instead.
tree
So
0.08.
navigation radios.
ILS runway tree 1 in use.
No, we can't do
Landing
it
and
there.
departing runway tree 1.
That's interesting.
VFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft red back hold short instructions. Advise controller on initial contact. You have hotel. Salinas Airport information hotel 2200 Zulu. Wind 269er at 12. Visibility 10. Sky condition. Few clouds at 1,900 feet. Few clouds at 4,900 feet. Temperature 19er. Dew point.
I'll shut it up. So it just shows, doesn't it, the learning curve when you are not familiar with an aircraft with just silly things like setting comm radio frequencies. So I had to go for a valid frequency to begin with. I keyed in an invalid frequency. And then I was able to put it into standby and then use the transfer button to transfer it over to the active frequency. So that's just familiarity with the buttons in the aircraft. So we've got some wonderful scenery around here, haven't we? So as soon as we turn back away from the hills, I'll start descending. So we need to be 2,500 feet above the runway level when we come down into the feathers to capture the glide slope. So we're just going to cruise along 5,000 feet. When we get past Vinco, we'll start descending for 3,000 feet, and that should be good for us. So this is probably my first flight in the 787 in 2 years. You know, since Flight Simulator first came out, or 3 years even. Two and a half years, at least 2.5. It's quite pitchy, isn't it? But maybe there's some wind over these hills. So we got a 15 knot wind. We're over the top of hills, so it is going to be throwing us around a little bit. I'm glad we went for an extra 1,000 feet above what we needed. So I looked at this on LittleNavMap with the elevation plot. We had a minimum of 4,000, so we've climbed to 5,000. I'm kind of glad we did, otherwise we would have been quite close to these hills. Let's go and have a look from outside. Those wings are something else, aren't they? Almost looks wrong. Okay, so 5 miles to Vinco. So rather than you sit watching this happen for the next few minutes, I'm going to pause recording and I'll unpause when we're a little bit further on. Okay, I've come back off of the pause just because I realised there's some other stuff we could look at while we're trundling along. So I've turned on the... For the first thing I've missed completely off of the checklist, I've switched the transponder mode over to TARA while we're flying along. Also I've gone and switched on the terrain mode, which works really nicely. So we can see here, you know, the nearby hills. So as we descend, we should see this pattern changing. So if we come back down to 3,000 feet now, we'll do a flight level change to get there. We'll also ask the aircraft to slow down to 220 knots. So we'll use spoilers to cause the aeroplane to slow down quickly, and then we should see these patterns change. So there comes the green banana, as they call it. So let's pull the range in. And you should see this changing as we descend. Yep, there it goes. So it's refactoring what is close to us in terms of the hillsides. So let's zoom out a little bit. It's very clever, isn't it? So it's kind of taking a cross section across from us. So we are getting below the line of the hills over there. So you'll see they are changing colour and going orange. Very cool. So we're going to go back to first stage of flaps, which will help us make the corner without stalling at these speeds. Getting lower and lower. We're coming down towards 3,000 feet though, which is good. So we get the gear down as well. We'll slow down a bit further to 200 knots. 25. We use the spoilers to make that happen. So if we zoom back in here, this is really nice, isn't it? The way the displays work. So we'll go for the next stage of flaps and come back down to 180 knots. When we make the turn, we should see the... Yeah, you can already see the localizer has appeared. Obviously it makes no sense yet, because we're not lined up with the runway. Obviously down over that way we can see the airfield in the distance and the beacon light flashing. So giving ourselves plenty of time. There goes the flight director kicking in to induce a right turn. The autopilot's following it. We're holding 180 knots. Very cool. Rendering is lovely, isn't it, in this screen? Very clear. So just to straighten things out a bit more, we're going to set the heading bug to the same direction as the runway. So the actual ILS direction is 306 degrees. So we'll do the same with this. So 306, so you can see the dotted line on the display there spinning round. 306 degrees. So everything is lined up now. Okay, so now you can see the glide slope has appeared as well, so we're absolutely on the localizer. Here comes the glide slope. So what we can do is go to approach mode now. So it's gone localizer mode and GS has appeared on the altitude. So we've got a diamond has come up now. This has gone solid. So this will start sliding. Here it comes. Very cool. Look in front of us. There's the runway. So let's go and extend the flaps further and slow down a bit more. Really 60 knots and go for full flaps. I believe 787s target about 150 knots. Good weather. We've got a crosswind of about 10 knots by the look of it. That's what we're experiencing here, though it may die off as we get lower. So we're just coming up to the glide slope, and you can see the aircraft is descending on the glide slope now. So approach mode is working. It's interesting though, these buildings on the approach. It'd be worth looking at the Navigraph chart for this, wouldn't it? So let's go and have a quick look. See if there's anything marked on it. So if we go and go to flight plan, copy the route to the clipboard, paste it in, remove that, delete that. So there's our route that we're coming in towards San Jose. So we want to select ILS runway 30 left, add to route, which will give us the chart. Now, is there? Yes, there's a building marker there, look. Warning, 373 feet. Interesting. And those are those buildings. So we're at 150 knots, so we're right on the money basically. So it'd be interesting to see if this changes to flare mode. I haven't actually checked the... what does it say here? Can it do... what sort of ILS is it? Can it do Cat 3? No, it's only Cat 2. So we're not going to be able to do... although it has gone to flare. So maybe that's a function of this aircraft, and certainly somebody will probably comment on this about the technicalities of Cat 2 and Cat 3 and whether some aircraft can do a full auto land. So localizer's gone to rollout mode, glide slip's gone to flare mode, so it will do the full auto land, even on a Cat 2 ILS. Whether that's realistic, I don't know. I'm not quite happy with this nose jumping up and down so much, but maybe it's... the wind has swung around though, look, we've now got a headwind. So seeing as this is behaving itself, should we have a look from outside? Whoops. It'd help if I could control the camera, wouldn't it? It's great fun to watch, isn't it? Those wings flexing. Look at the gap between the flaps. So they obviously used that as an aerodynamic device. So the leading edge of the flaps is like another wing. back into San Jose. Let's see how well it does this flare then.
50, 40, 30,
Get ready to jump inside.
20, 10.
It didn't flare, it just slammed it into the runway. That may be because it wasn't Cat 3, so we're putting it back on the centre line. So autopilot is off. Reversers, handbrakes, and we can come off here. So reversers can come off, and we'll just follow the exit route. Flaps are travelling back up again. Okay, that was interesting. So we're going to jump straight across the runway here without getting ATC permission, or ground control permission I should say, and we'll just pull out to the taxiway. So obviously, as in common with lots of other aircraft, on the way in you're going to go and turn off the landing lights, you're going to turn off the strobes, you're going to switch on the APU very probably, so you'll start it back up again. And then by the time you get to a gate, if you don't have external power, you can rely on your APU once you've shut the engines down. But yeah, so for a first impression, I'm actually quite impressed with that now. It kind of seemed predictable. The landing obviously was terrible, but even though it said flare mode, it didn't flare. So the jury's out on that one really. But yeah, on the whole though, seems to work. So obviously over the next few days and weeks I'll do some flights with it, some proper routes with airways and the rest of it, and we'll see how we get on with VNav, see how it behaves, if it behaves itself or not. And we'll do some more landing tests with it, and we'll do some manual landings and some fully automatic landings and see how we get on. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed that, and I'll see you again soon.